interactive program. We have live audience, and this program is being live streamed to YouTube and Twitter. So today's topic is majoritarianism, the majoritarian myth. This is a wonderful book written by Professor Kausik Gangopadhyay. It's a pleasure, both from the academic point of view and my personal point of view, to introduce Professor Kausik Gangopadhyay. So he is a professor of economics at IIM Kozhikode. But more importantly, to me at least, personally, he has been my batchmate. So we have been friends and debaters from our college days. After that, he went to ISI and then completed his PhD. Now he has written this very wonderful book. Today the program is that first he will introduce the book and will make a very short presentation about the book. This is for the benefit of readers who may not have read his book. And then there is kind of a panel that will ask him questions. So in that panel, we have Kiran Patekar. He's a very well-read person, and his perspectives, his overall view are very nice. I have known him for a long time. We also have, I can see, Sharadindu Mukherjee, a very famous historian. And of course, I'll be also there. And once that, first, Professor Gangopadhyay will introduce the book, during which there will be no question, answer, or interruptions. After which, the expert panel will ask some questions and we'll have some discussions. Then it will be thrown open to the live audience for their questions. So, I guess without much more delay, I request Kausik, my friend Professor Gangopadhyay, to start.
Thank you, Arnav. That was very kind introduction, and of course, I mean, I still cherish the 2 years we spent together in a hostel. So, how much time do you want me to allocate in presenting the book?
I think about 20-25 minutes. You can speak uninterrupted,
20,
so that we have some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you have some slides. Shall I do that, or you want me to just go over it?
Up to you. You can share the slides. It's up to you.
Because some data and other things are there.
Correct.
But it is sort of visible. I mean,
yeah, one second.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'll introduce some slides. So, actually, I'll tell you something before going forward. So, the motivation of the book is to create some sort of a dialogue between left and right. Of course, cannot make others come to the dialogue. That's up to them. But actually, we can address their problems and dilemmas. So typically in a debate between the right and the left, what happens? The right says that, well, you are not exactly equitable to different parties. And the left says, yes, but we have a framework for that. And because of that framework, we are doing what we are doing. Now, the right says, well, I don't like your framework, but that's pretty much it. The left says you don't have a framework. So what I tried to present, this book, it never tries to say what left is saying their malintention. Never says that. It says that left has all the goodwill and well intention. But the book is trying, but good intention need not mean it is scientific. So I might have a very good intention for the world, and I just can think that, I'll do some, I'll just ask the sun god to give wealth. But that doesn't mean that it will happen unless I have the right kind of mechanism, right, to make it happen. So I just try to see whether the left framework is scientific or not. So that is the entire point of this exercise. So there are 5 parts in this book. The first part, there are many things. Firstly, I introduced the majoritarian myth. I think in this Voice of India, I will not take much of it, but we all know about it. The media, they highlight the atrocities against the minorities a lot, and they underplay the atrocities against the majority. These are some examples I've given, individual examples, and I've also given collective examples like Kashmir genocide, 1,20,000 people, biggest um, exodus since after partition. People left, but there are only less than 2,000 articles since that time, 30 years. However, in post-Godhra, there are 30,000 articles almost, 29,000 somewhat. So basically, you can see the big gap. And of course, Kashmir genocide is completely unilateral event. No Kashmir Muslim got hurt or anything like that. At the other end, in the post-Godhra riots, if you see the statistics, Muslims got the bigger share of the casualties, but it's not that disproportionate. Still, it was all about it's Nazi Germany and all this kind of things. Yeah, and then what I've done a survey for 3 years, 2020, 21, 22. And in the global news database, I have found 8,806 mentions of these two words, majoritarian or majoritarianism. Now, a lot of the times the uses in an abstract sense, in a philosophical sense, or maybe in a sense, but it doesn't identify the majority community person. But 1/5 of the time it does identify who are the target majority about whose atrocious majoritarianism we are concerned. And those target audience I have taken statistics, and you can see the Hindus are more than 80%, actually 80%, but there are some other places Hindus are there. Then next target is Buddhist and Sinhalese of Sri Lanka, another around 8%, and whites again more than 2%. Well, there might be some qualitative analysis which might put more focus, but I leave it to the future researchers on that point. But it is clear that basically everything blame comes to Hindus of India mostly. Now, it is right if the media is right, sort of. If really our constitution that is actually biased against, but actually we see that the constitution is not really biased. Constitution is actually it is biased in a way, but it is biased against the majority. It is not biased against the minority. So I've given some examples, but I think this is pretty much nowadays. There's a very book that became best seller. Anand Ranganathanji's Hindus in Hindu Rashtra. He talked about it a lot more detail, but I've given the sum and substance. Basically, Article 28 and 30 together, it negates any teaching of Hindu text or Hindi text in the education system, but the minorities, they don't suffer from that. And of course, the Article 25, it actually says that propagation of religion is a basic freedom. So basically, it is not that individually people will talk about religion. So there can be armies of people whose only task is to convert other people, and that sort of seems justified on the basis of Indian Constitution. So I talked about some other elements, but I think we are more than familiar with it, so I just keep it. Communal Violence Bill, Ramchandra Guha, he says that naming any road after Shivaji in New Delhi is an act of majoritarianism. I don't know. So basically, naming a road after a Hindu hero sort of looks like a bad idea. When there are maybe scores, maybe it can go to 3 digit, I think. Number of roads, prime roads after the Mughal emperors and Muslim heroes. Not all of them were really heroes. That's pretty much high sum of substance is. So there is a paradox. Paradox is why the constitution is blaming so much against the Hindu. We'll come back to it. Now I talked about basically the origin of the myth. Now origin means, so basically there is a dilemma between being right and being on the side of the majority. But that dilemma actually, it does not say the majority has to be identity based. It basically says the majority could be sort of ignorant people. They are the majority, right? It's a domain expertise based. So these people from Plato onwards, they talked about it. And last person to sort of talk. There's a person, Alexis de Tocqueville, a French diplomat. who sort of also talked about it in his book, Democracy in America. He says basically the majority, the ignorant majority, they talk about everything. Now, solution for Tocqueville was to put more of a experiential thinking, like aristocrats who knows governance in places, like it was the case with Europe. And there's a one person very famous, John Stuart Mill. He came after this, his book on liberty, he again talks about it. But he says, well, what do we need to do? We need to strengthen individual rights. Yeah, you have to give freedom of speech and all this kind of thing. But things actually changed completely after this takeover of cultural Marxism. Antonio Gramsci and his group over the academy. And these people sort of thought about some cultural classes of the society. So this is called, there's a fancy theory, it's called conflict theory. So one person who is doing very good work on this is James Lindsay. So James Lindsay has a website, New Discourses. So where you can go to and you can check the conflict theory and you can see the origins and everything. So basic idea is this society, like in the original Marxism, it is a class fight, right? It's a struggle, class struggle between two classes, the poor called proletariat and the rich called bourgeoisie. Now here it is a struggle between two cultural classes, the majority and the minority. And then of course the majority is always oppressing, like the rich does to the poor. And so therefore majority is always guilty. And because majority is always guilty, you have to basically ignore any atrocity that happens on the minority by the majority. And we have to highlight way more any atrocity that happens on the majority by the or any atrocity that happens on the minority by the majority. Yeah. So basically, so we got the drift. I suppose I might have made a mistake, but got the drift. So this idea. So now there are two problems with this idea. One is, of course, you see basically a struggle. You don't see any cooperation in this society. You only see struggle. And even if you do agree on that struggle part, then of course the other problem is basically you see this society sort of, I mean, all the classes are sort of symmetric. So it is always the numerical majority that will persecute the minority. This is very problematic assumption. One of my favorite writers is Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So Solzhenitsyn, he mentioned in basically in Tsarist Russia, so different minority groups, they actually used to have a lot of power. That is always the case in many places, many empires, many ages. All these things have happened. Anyway, so then I actually looked into basically, can there be a what can be an asymmetric thing? Now here there is an idea in sociology. It's called linear theory of social change or linear theory of social evolution, LTAC. It's a sociological term. But these people, they sort of assume when things will linearly change, right? So there's another term Marxists use, they call historical determinism. So the idea is basically you look at Jesus Christ, right? He's the first Christian, and then it goes. It will never go down, it will never go anywhere else. But that sort of, and then, so it will not come down. And that's one part. And the second part is essentially, if you don't accept this view, then you have to be otherized, right? So the heathens in the Christian view, they have no rights, and that's actually the reason that these European colonizers they persecuted the indigenous Americans and took away land and everything. So they don't have any right on the land. Right? Land is given by the God, and it is for the Christians. And this was also quoted by one American judge, I think federal court, even in the 19th century. Yeah. So I think that time the situation little changed, and whatever land was left out among the Red Indians, they got their right as reservations. Anyway, so this linear theory, this is sort of what happens when we have a mental mapping. We believe in some mental theory. Now, the moment you have the linear theory, you believe in it, and then you have to allocate a lot of resources for that. and you have to be intolerant to others. So what I have done, and I will not go into too much detail. So this is the definition of the linear theory that I have done. And there are two aspects. One is basically the linear plan, which is historical determinism. And second one is otherization, right? The Marxian, so there are different names they give. For the Christians, it's the heathens, otherization. For the Marxists, you are in the wrong side of history. I did not know history has sides, but my communist relatives, they told me in the childhood that, yeah, it has sides. So, and of course, there is other otherization like Ambedkar ji also says a lot of times, kafirs by Islamists. And then cultural Marxists, basically, if you are not with the side of their equitarianism, so everything has to be exactly equal, then basically you are sort of bigoted, you are sort of racist, even if a Jew can be Nazi. So all these kind of epithets. Anyway, so my theory is very in conformity is a very famous theory called social identity theory. This is done by two very famous psychologists, Touchfeld and Turner, Polish and British respectively. I'm not going to detail. I've given different examples of those, all these different LTSEs. So this is basically the sum and substance: political Christianity, political Islam, communism, Nazism, racism, and cultural Marxism. These are like LTSEs. And the other side is nationalism, Hinduism, Hindutva. So these are non-LTSEs. So I'll explain why they are not LTSEs. But before coming there, Yuval Noah Harari, he is a left scholar, but what he describes in his terms is basically what I have described here. In his terms, these are called religions, these LTSEs. So he says Nazism, communism, liberalism, there are religions like Christianity or Islam. It's written in his book Sapiens, chapter 12. And there is another scholar who is a conservative. It's called Yoram Hazony. He has a very famous book, The Virtue of Nationalism. And there he talked about imperialism. And he actually done these 5, he called them best imperialism. He called it Christianity, Islam, communism, Nazism, and liberalism. So these are like 5 imperialisms here. So it basically matches. This is, I'm not saying something crazy, it's accepted opinion sort of. And then nationalism is sort of not LTSE because nationalism is not frozen, right? America was originally for Christians, white Christians. Then it extended to all Christians. Then it extended to all people of all religions. So it is not a frozen theory, it changes. Doesn't mean that they will do always the right thing, but they are not fundamentally, there is no linear theory. So so basically there are 2 kinds of conflicts. Some conflicts have secular kind of basis, right? So there are some common border, common area, common property. When you are roommates, the share of the rooms, all these things, there will be fights and things. That is not I would say completely unavoidable. But there are some other fights which actually happens because of ideologies, because you have to have this linear plan, you have to carry it out. That is avoidable. And that is done by LTSE. Of course, you understand the problematic, thing is about Hinduism. So basically, Hinduism is sort of made by the Christians, but if you see, it is not a very different kind of religion. So here there is a word, Gandhi is saying, I'm a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, a Parsi, a Jew. And Jinnah Sahab, he is responding, only a Hindu could say that. Basically, it shows Hinduism is very different than other religions. Nehruji, he has also a word, Hinduism is a fake, as vague, amorphous, many-sided, all things to all men. It is hardly possible, to sort of define it. So, and then there is also scholarly work by S.L. Balgangadhar and others. But at any rate, Hinduism, we have cyclical views. All the yugas, they go cyclically. Everything cyclical, right? Hindu, adharma, dharma, cyclically. Sukhani, dukhani, chakravat parivartan, sukhani, dukhani, that is also cyclical, like that. Hindutva, of course, then if you look at Savarkar's work, he actually talks about equality before the law. So LTSEs doesn't talk about that. They want one group to be privileged against the others. So it cannot be again LTSE. And last strand of Hindutva, so I've looked into 3 strands of Hindutva, one by Chandranath Bose and Rabindranath Tagore, second by this Savarkarji, and third is by RSS BJP. In the RSS BJP stand, basically, there are many people who say that the moment RSS BJP comes to power, there will be genocide of Muslims, that it happened in Germany, and I'm hearing listening to this thing from 1996 onward. Arnav was also there that time. That time we are listening from that time. So now what happened that essentially that genocide I'm yet to see after 28 years. And BJP came to power so many times, right? 98, 99, 2014, 2019. Nothing has happened. On the other hand, the proportion of minorities in India has actually increased in all these years. So if you look at basically number of riots, they have come down under Narendra Modi government. Look at the minority only scholarship, they have gone up. Welfare scheme, they have gone up. So basically, LTSEs don't do that. The moment they get power, they actually jeopardize the other party, right? You know how when the Islamist takeover happened in Pakistan or in Pakistan, how things happened. When Nazi takeover happened, how things happened in June. That's not what happened. Now, this is now still is a hypothesis. The majoritarians, they have their hypothesis. They say that majority is always guilty, and my hypothesis is the LTSE is guilty. Now, how to test it out? So the way one can test it out, I looked at the genocide. So these are the very famous genocide discussed in Western world, and you can see all these. I mean, there are so many genocides. I cannot take each of them, but I've taken the leading ones. And you can see that almost all the genocide there's an LTSE happening. Were the majority involved in this genocide? Actually, no. Most of the genocide, the majority did not know. Majority of the Germans, they did not know that Jews are being killed in concentration camp. They are so basically majority doing violence against minority physically. That's a myth. It doesn't happen usually. The other thing is now these are like big acts. Now, what about the small acts of genocide? Now, there is a problem here. You cannot really look at news media reports and say this guy is a victim. Because what happens, news media reports, there's a virtual victimhood. There's an idea of virtual victimhood. So, one community, they actually can show themselves persecuted so that they can be people get other sympathy, and they in turn actually grow and distress the other guy. There's plenty of examples. If you look at the Nazi literature, it will look like Jews are the problem, but actually they got power and exterminated the Jews from their captured Third Reich, right, from their area. Now, what I've done, I've used a framework. It's called Tacit Knowledge Framework by Hayek, Friedrich Hayek, very famous Nobel laureate in economics. So basically, he says everybody has some knowledge that cannot be written, but that he uses for his best interest. So victim suppose someone is victim or aggressor, the persons doing that, they know themselves, right? Who is the aggressor, who is. Now the victim, they will try to move away. Like the Jews, they left Nazi Germany. And basically the population proportion of the victim community shall come down. That will not happen with the aggressor community. So there are many cases I have taken, 4 cases. Majority could have LTSE, minority could have also LTSE. Majority could have LTSE, minority not LTSE. Majority both not having LTSE. And the other way, a majority without LTSE, minority with LTSE. And in all these cases, I am to see what is the difference between the majoritarian hypothesis and LTSE hypothesis. So the test bed comes for the case where majority is without LTSE and minority with LTSE. Because the majoritarian hypothesis will say the minority proportion will go down, but LTSE hypothesis will say the majority proportion will. And if you look at the test cases, India, Lebanon, Tibet, Nepal, all these cases where basically the majority may not have any LTSE, all these cases minority population is not going down, going up, and majority population is going down. So it was my hypothesis only. The majoritarian people, they don't never give any hypothesis. They never go for any testing. They just give you a hypothesis as an absolute truth. I'm not doing that. I'm saying this is my hypothesis, yours, let's test it to data. And after the testing, this is what is coming out. if you really believe in me so far, so there are many confirmatory tests I have done. Suppose everything I have said is wrong. Suppose LTSE, liberalism is not an LTSE. Then basically social intolerance in America will actually, sort of go down with liberalism becoming more prominent. But it is actually going other way around. All the surveys are saying the moment liberalism going up, social intolerance is actually increasing in America. And it is also happening in cross section. The countries where liberalism is very strong, America, Britain, many countries in continental Europe, like Netherlands, polarization is more. The countries where liberalism is weak, like China, Japan, Russia, there actually polarization is less. So essentially, liberalism is sort of makes it happen, all these problems. So last section is more philosophical, but basically there is an idea of Satya and Ahimsa for social harmony in Indic tradition. And there I've shown this is the way to go forward for a sustainable social basis. Now, am I kind of made a very good book? Of course, I would always say that, but in academic scholarship, it is understood that one book need not be taken as an authority. There has to be many books coming out on together on the same topic. They are coming to the same conclusion. But here is the problem. The problem is for someone in the social sciences or like sociology, anthropology, it is almost impossible to say that liberalism is a bad thing. If you do that, your career is very much at stake. You can't do anything. I'm an economist and I survived by doing some economics papers. I survived so far. Now, that's why I could do this work for a decade or so as a pastime passion. And sort of I developed everything myself. So that said, that is exactly why you will not see any other book in academia against this idea of majoritarianism. On the other hand, if you write any book, I mean, there are books in my book I have mentioned the book, many famous authors like Asutosh Barsne from Brown University and other people. They said complete nonsense, but those books are considered sacrosanct in academics because they actually they basically the conclusion for that book goes in favor of the dominant social theory. So there is basically a kind of mediocre scholarship that is happening here. Some of us are coming from the engineering or technical STEM disciplines where you may not be able to do that, but what is happening that introduction is same, conclusion is same, whatever you do in between, that's sort of that. But that's not the genuine scholarship, right? If you do some really good work, conclusion has to change. The way you look at the world has got to change. But that's kind of not allowed. And of course, it's not me saying, this is said by Alan David Bloom, The Closing of the American Mind. And this book was published around 40 years ago. Things have become way worse since. So I think I'll stop here. I'll go with your questions and things. Thank you very much. It is always a pleasure to come to Voice of India meets. I was last time, I think, on Syama Prasad Mukherjee on some leftist propaganda things. It was also very kind of you to invite me and give me space one more time.
Thank you very much, Kausik. So I read the book. It's a very good read. I can recommend it to everybody. I mean, couple of things, because of time, I don't think he could go into much of detail. But there is this vexing problem of how the judiciary in India is also kind of doing this. So there's a quote by our Chandrachud-ji, right? Yeah. So anyway, now one thing which I found, which I would have probably wanted a bit more discussion, you touched upon it very briefly, is this problem of casteism, the so-called problem of casteism, right? So that is also being propagated as a majoritarianism. There's a Brahmanical culture, so-called Brahmanical culture against the Dalits. You touched upon it in bits and pieces. Mallikarjun Kharge had made a very interesting comment. Ambedkar, of course, wrote a lot about this, and this is still being propagated in India. That's the claim. So maybe you can touch upon it a bit more.
Sure. So the problem of the caste is this equal outcome. So basically, you randomly define a group based on some imaginary identity, real identity. I mean, Nicholas Dirks, he said that these are castes of mind, imaginary identity. So, so there's a famous, very recent book came out of Tom Sowell, Social Justice Fallacies, where he has shown countless examples where basically communities, they are actually exactly different on outcome way. But my focus was in this book was LTSC. The idea was, is there an LTSC in casteism? The idea of LTSC, so if you look at the most casteist person, he's not saying that I want the other caste to go away. He says the all castes will stay together and everything, but of course my caste could have different representation in this. So there is no claim of LTSC by anyone, right? So that is sort of the reason I did not discuss too much. The other reason is the book has a very focused on the idea of majoritarianism. Caste and other issues are more complex. I have another book sort of in mind to look into it, but that's the reason. Yeah.
So that brings me to my next question. So you have looked upon LTSC, basically the one parameter, which I agree is the most important parameter, but you probably kind of made it almost the only parameter, is the reduction in the population, right? Now, LTSC, I mean, of course, that's the most important parameter, and that's a very tangible measure. You can measure it, you can test it. As you said, scientific testability was one of the highlights of your book. But the other is this, I mean, I always do not need to decimate other people or minorities. I may subjugate them, I may use them. See, the Christianity, this is a very interesting thing. You touched upon Christianity and how they could rule over other non-Christians by using this. But then when the other people turned Christian, they still use this, saying, look, God created us better than you, so you must be slaves. So isn't that still another measure of LTSC, or is it just only the population decline?
So that's a good point you have said. So now Christianity, so you're talking about racism and Christianity. So what happened? Usually when the Christians' values were really there before Protestant Revolution, so someone is bad because he doesn't believe in Christian values, and racism was sort of absent. So if you go to the Shakespeare's play, which is Othello, right? The hero is a black, right? A sailor, right? And that was sort of not very different. I mean, so I gave quotes from Cornell's study, San Francisco, and the Africa was not a black hole and all this kind of thing. Those things were not there. But then what happened? Over time, the Protestant Revolution came, and then people are leaning to more material kind of basis. And this basis, so there's a very debate on that, on this thing, mind over matter or matter over mind. But basically it is what is happening, material guys, they're kind of winning over the mind guys. And if you see Hegel's dialectics, so this is the early part of 19th century, sort of this defeat started happening. So Hegel's dialectics, Hegelian dialectics, there is something called spirit that actually makes this dialectics happen. But if you go to Karl Marx, he's applying the same dialectics of Hegel. He threw away the spirit part because we are leaving the God out. And so with this thing, what is happening? Before, the Jews were bad because they were simply non-Christians. But now Jews are bad because they are from a different race. So anti-Semitism, it is coming from that. Similarly, the indigenous Americans, they are bad before because they are not Christians. Now they are bad because they are from a different race. Right? Same thing, they are coming to India also and all this kind of things. But of course, so what I'm trying to say that racism has a very continuity with Christianity. But if you come to this, basically the other parameters, there are different parameters we can say. First thing is, people have to allocate resources for it. So if you are a Marxist, you have to go to basically a part of your time. It's not 24 hours for you. For the party and other things, you have to give 1 hour or 2 hours every day. You have to go to the meetings and all these things and mindless all these things, because that's what you are supposed to do for the LTSC. It's not no. So we had a running joke in West Bengal. So if there is a rain in Vietnam, the umbrellas will open in Kolkata. So, but why is it happening? Because this LTS is there, right? Marxism is winning all of us, and everybody has to sort of work for this. You have to do all these things. This is one. Second is, in the social narrative of them, they will say, I am best because I'm X. If you go to the political Muslims, they will say, well, I'm best because we are Muslims, and you better be Muslims, right? If you go to the Marxist, they'll say, yeah, because I'm kind of communist, I'm sort of the progressive, right? It's a progressivism, you might say. And that's why you are not good, because you are not regressive. And if you go to the liberal, now what happens if you go to now politically, although Christianity and Islam, there's a lot of political groups, but a lot of Muslims and Christians, they are not so political. So, I mean, as an individual person. So if you ask them, are you the best because you are a Muslim or a Christian? So many people say, no, we have to do good work and other things, karma. But if you go to the most decent liberal, you ask him, are you the best because you are a liberal? He'll say, of course. You are not good enough, that's why you're not liberal. And that actually shows that extent of LTSC thing is way more for the liberals compared to the other people, the other groups I mentioned. So there are other ways also, and of course, the last thing I will say that education. So for the groups that have no LTSC, there is no problem with reality. They will say, okay, let reality prevail. But the groups that have problem with have LTSC, they won't let the reality come, right? Because the theory is given and it has to carry out. And this is why you can see the Galileo's times political Christianity would negate everything that was different. In madrasa nowadays, you can't really teach everything that you want them to learn, right? And in liberalism, of course, things are being cancelled very, very heavily in America.
Cancelled.
Right? Science.
Correct. So I'll just touch upon one last point. See, just re-emphasize this, that LTSC can affect, of course, population decline is one thing, but the population decline may not be very much evident in the beginning. I'll give you an example. Just last Friday, I mean, just 2 days back, we had a holiday across many states in India, and the central government holiday on Good Friday. Now, even in UP, I'm sitting in Uttar Pradesh. How many percentage of Christians are there? Correct? You can't even probably, I mean, you can't, probably 0 point something, right? You still have to have them 2 holidays, right? And then the reason is now the number of holidays, the number of resources is limited. So you take away holiday from Ganesh Puja, you take away holiday from Saraswati Puja. As a result, what happens? Now Saraswati Puja is no longer a holiday. So people have to go to classes. In fact, there are schools that religiously take exams on that day. So it's essentially ensuring that this culture of Saraswati Puja is lost among Hindus in UP, right? Finally, at some point in time, this culture, this cultural decimation, not just always the population decimation, but this cultural decimation, isn't this also LTSC? I know this may be very hard to measure, so your scientific thing may not be doing it. And your scientific argument also, I mean, you mentioned in your own book that the Parsis is a case where it may not really show up as a scientific evidence, but there's things. Yeah, but before that, this question of cultural domination versus cultural decimation.
No, that's a very no. I got your point very well, Arnav. It's very well made. But the issue is here. What I've done. Suppose you ask this. I'm just trying to see the entire book from the liberal point of view as well. So suppose you ask the liberal. He said it's a good thing, right? People are kind of forgetting Saraswati Puja. People are also celebrating Friday. He'll say that. Now, what he cannot evade is population decline.
Oh, so, right. So that's the tangible evidence. That's the measurable evidence, right?
Measurable evidence. So I don't know how many liberals have really read the book or will read the book, but the book has been written without any disrespect to them, giving them every intention. So the dialogue.
Correct, but of course, these Parsis going away. That anyway, I think we can.
But they are the Parsis also. No, but I have an explanation for that. Basically, the Parsis actually got away because they also got persecution, but it is from the state. The state said license Raj, and basically all the entrepreneurship is stopped. And Parsis were one of the most enterprising people,
Right.
right?
Right.
So they are
Yeah.
there all the East India Company trades and everything. So they actually sought better Greenlands, other places, Greenland lands and other things, and then sort of moved there. So
Correct. Yes.
yeah, that's sort of the idea.
Right. Right. So now I invite Kiranji. You
Ah,
have.
Thank you. No? And Kausik ji, namaskar. It was a real pleasure to go through your book. I must say I've gone through it exhaustively, and it is very obvious that it is a huge labor that you have put in. It's a very complex and well-researched, many-sided look at these problems. I just want to make one or two points and then ask you one question. One thing is that this LTSC, it looks to me as though you call it political Christianity, but let us say Christianity or political Christianity seems to be a kind of prototype, for everything else. I wonder if you have read Ram Swarupji's book on, the Hindu look at Christianity and Islam. Have you read it?
I've read it.
Oh, yeah. So there he shows how Islam actually took off from Christianity, and even Sitaram Goelji's book on, the Christianity as an artifice of aggression. Yeah, he's very pertinent point he makes about how the Nazi thing. Of course, it was a mixture of many things, but they did base it on Christianity to a great extent. The persecution of Jews.
Now I'll say something. Kiranji, if I may.
Yes.
If I may, I'll just add something to your point. Now, Ramswarup and Sitaram Goel, they are at heart of the voice of India, and of course, we adore them.
Yes.
But I will say something the liberals adore. Yuval Noah Harari. And Yuval Noah Harari, he is writing that basically the people used to have a cyclical view of the world before Christianity came. So the Greek historians like Herodotus or Chinese historians, they all have this. Now, Christianity started the linear theory.
Yes.
So there are even more evidence coming from them.
And you have done a great service by showing that liberalism itself is an LTSC, isn't it? So
Most powerful one now.
Yes, very powerful, and thankfully you have proved that we are actually at the aggrieved rather than the aggressors. No? Hindus are being shown as aggressors, but we are the aggrieved party, and at the mercy of intolerance, which is also another brilliant quote that you have given by Karl Popper. No, that there is a limit to tolerance. Particularly if you show tolerance to somebody who is intolerant, at some point you will have be forced to become intolerant yourself in order to save yourself. So the other thing is that
this is a very tell me, sir.
Please
So I've
continue.
also made it Karl Popper because Karl Popper did not say that majority is always intolerant.
Yeah.
He said it depends on the culture. I mean, so there was that time this kind of polarization has not happened. So Karl Popper wrote that intolerant paradox of intolerance, tolerance. Then what happened? This guy, Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse was the person who was a student in the Frankfurt School, and he came to America because Hitler was killing the Jews, of course. And then he actually made his Harvard, and that's the start of liberalism. And he is writing in the 1960 or something. He is writing that we have the tolerance paradox. So what do we need to do? And this is the beginning of liberalism. The left-wing organizations, their criticism has to be tolerated. The right-wing people has to be completely intolerant. He's writing it. It's there. His quotes.
So one thing is that your book has completely demolished the majoritarian myth, because you have given data and it is very convincing. Of course, a book like this, which you convey ideas, is very complex to write and also goes to a niche audience, because it is also somebody, you need somebody who will take the patience to try to understand what you're saying. But the question that I have is, you have also said that we need to bring up Satya and Ahimsa as an ideal. Are you recommending this for Hindu society or to the world at large? And I'm sure that
All of us.
the world at large. Okay. So
World
it
and
should not
Hindu
become,
both.
because if it is a Gandhian type of idea, then it will become another
Mhm.
LTS, a very rigidly applied ahimsa, and
So I'll say something. Gandhiji, he got this idea of Satya Ahimsa from the Indic tradition, right? The Mahabharata is there. In
yes.
fact, in the Karna Parva. So there are Astadasa Parva. One of these is Karnas. That's why there's a dilemma between Arjuna and Yudhishthir concerning and Satya and Ahimsa. It's a very nuanced debate is there. Now, what happened? Gandhiji, when he said this word, that's good, but he actually translated Ahimsa as non-violence, and then he went to Russian Christianity to understand non-violence. And so there's a table talk by Sri Aurobindo. He's saying that Gandhiji is essentially a Russian Christian in a Hindu body, and that's why Christians all over the world love him. And so Gandhiji, what he's saying that if you hit someone back, it's an hingsha. That is not actually our tradition. And Gandhiji also had a problem in explaining our tradition. So he had to say that essentially, if you look at Ramayana and Mahabharata, right, most Hindus consider them real events. They might have, Rama killing Ravana is a real event. Arjuna and fighting the Kauravas, real event. Of course, there may be other levels, other subtle levels, Sakshma, Karana levels where other things are meaning. But they are real events. But Gandhi says, no, Mahabharata actually has not happened. It's all metaphorical. So that's kind of, I think Gandhiji has not understood it quite well.
So I mean, when you select, because uh, I don't want to take away the whole discussion. I will just stop with this point. But these are the 5 yamas and niyamas of Patanjali. The 5 positive things like Satya, Saucha, Shanti, etc. And 5 negative things like Ahimsa, Parigraha. This is supposed to create a psychological climate which helps you in your interiorization. And of course, you have also quoted from the Gita and all that. But I would rather say that we should reconnect with our tradition instead of just picking out 1 or 2 things. What do you say to that? Reconnect with the tradition.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And give it a new utterance. Give it a modern utterance.
That's what, sir. So, but ahimsa, this is what I'm trying to say. This is the point. So, the ahimsa is different depending on the dharma. So, for a yoga student who is actually doing yoga, his dharma is not to go for himsa. And this is the reason that Vishwamitra, when the Rakshasas came and they are destroying all the yagyas, Vishwamitra, he knew also a lot of weapons, right? He was from Kshatriya family and he was also, gave Rama many weapons. But he could not use it because he is doing this practice of yoga, he cannot take them. But for a Kshatriya, the idea was you have to kill the evil, right? You have to kill the antisocials so that peace is restored. That's ahimsa. So now this dharma is Satya and Ahimsa is same for all of us. But the how you act depends upon your role in the
Mahatma
society.
Gandhi requests Hindus not to strike back. So let's not waste our time in that. I'm sure you did not mean that. I'm sure you did not mean that. So
right.
Thank you.
So that's what I motivated Ahimsa from Mahabharata.
Yes. So Abhijit,
right. Abhijit had a question, right? So Abhijit, Abhijit Bhattacharya, Abhijit, you may have a question. Abhijit, you have to unmute yourself. Abhijit, you have to unmute.
Still mute.
Oh, Vijit, you have to unmute yourself. Yes. Yeah, please ask the question. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, sorry, my screen is a little slow, so it's not showing whether unmuted or not. So my point was, I mean, see, I think you made one point that the Christian religion's killing started, or the killing started more around the advent of the Protestantism. But if you see the Christian philosophy, I mean, what was rightly said by Dr. Kiran and Arnav, if you see the Christian establishment is about killing others. I'm talking about, see, when the Christians come to power. I mean, when I say power, it's the European power. At that point of time, I'm talking about the power, European power. 782. And if you break down the name of Charlemagne, it is basically Charles the Magnificent, or Charles the Magnificent.
Yeah.
782, he orders the killing of 4,500 pagans or Germanic pagans because they do not adhere to Christianity. And this is the man, Charlemagne, who is revered as one of the greatest Christian kings of Europe. And 4,500, what we have to understand, in the 8th century is a huge number, and that too in Europe. It's not so, and that is how they have propagated. I mean, I agree to. I mean, it's LTAC is definitely, again, if you see, was he the majoritarian? May not be not. Do you think that, my question is, do you think it's the majoritarian is about definitely about the culture, like the Hindu culture, even if it is a majoritarian, it will not establish or try to, your LTAC, I agree to that, that it will not try to say that, okay, abolish others. But if the non-LTAC comes to power, it is about the power. If I have power and I have the first and foremost action by this power will be to obliterate others unless they fall under my power. Be it in the name of whatever it is. Be it in the name of whatever it is. Number one. Number two, see, this communist or leftist paradox is a very nice thing. See, in Russia, they talk about majoritarianism because they want the so-called worker class to revolt against the royalists. The royalists are very small in number, so they want to establish that. So they take their sides. Come to an Indian scenario, they are against the Hindus because they say that they are the majoritarianism. See, they have a very funny aspect of shuttling between whoever is in power. In Iran, if you see the Iranian revolution, history of the Iranian revolution, while the Islamists were absolutely the main cause of causing the revolution, the communists sided with the Islamists, saying the royalists are taking away our economy or destroying our economy. And what happens to them is a different story. I mean, after the Islamists come, the first thing that they abolish is communism. So, don't you think that it is more about siding for my own benefit? Is what the liberals think, and it has and the Christian world from the very beginning, or maybe because it was established by the very fundamental, either you follow me or there is no way to save yourself. The very theory of this in this Abrahamic religions and the people that they follow and things like that has its root in that problem that they try to obliterate it. It's, I mean, definitely
Right,
LTAC, but also on this.
Okay.
Shall I begin? So basically, you see, the problem is you have to understand my constraint. Whenever you make a theory, it's got to be limited. My LTAC is also a theory. But I have only shown it's a better theory than the cherished majoritarian theory of the liberal. So my theory is not that it's not that it is a great it can explain all intolerance in a way. But I'll give you some of the ideas on these different counts you have said. Um, so of course the idea of so in our culture we have this dharma and adharma. So these are the words, right? Dharmas are want to create a sustainable world. Adharmas they want to create an unsustainable. It can be from any culture or anyone, but this is kind of a root idea, right? Now, if you of course these LTSs were adharmas because they want to basically create an unsustainable world, and they also understand that. So if you look at any LTSC culture, there is this judgment day, right? They are not saying also this is a sustainable world going to achieve. They are saying this is going to collapse or something like that. So this is a psychological admission in a way of non-sustainable. But anyway, but I'll come to your different points. Yeah, you are right that Christianity is not that nice and all these things. But what I'm trying to say that basically the of course Christians violence is way more. Vivekananda himself said all this. But what I'm trying to say that basically Christianity is the idea that you have to go and other cultures they actually got a lot of boost I think after Protestant because the rituals Catholicism is invested with many rituals, celibacy and other things for the priest and everything. So those are actually taken away. And this is what Vivekananda also wrote. He has a very good book. I think this is a travelogue. It's called Paripraja. So where he actually Paripraja, right? He actually explains all these things. That this Protestantism is created a miracle. So basically, these missionaries they procreate like anyone, and they can create another British race. If all the British are gone, only the missionaries are left. So that's what it is. So that way, Protestantism, I think, they exacerbated the problem. So the idea of my book is not go against many religions. So I see, if you look at very realistically, in India we have at least a big constituency, 25% or so, who are not Hindu and who don't consider themselves Hindu. Now we can't whisk them away anyway. So the best thing we can expect is basically they'll reform themselves and they will. And this is I think this is the most ahimsa, non-violent way of approaching things. Is let them reform. Let Indian Christians they become like Orthodox churches of the East Europe who don't proselytize, who just live like normal citizens. Muslims also go to the Christian route and all these things. I'm not saying I don't know how realistic is it or how is it, but that's what idea of non-violence I'm advocating. But it doesn't mean that it will happen that way. It could happen anyway. It can. I mean, the way I see it, the way polarization is happening. So if you look at this incidents, this mafia, right, who got shot in UP. What's his name? No, not shot. Sorry, who died in jail.
Ansari,
Ansari, right? Mukhtar Ansari. So many people, right, came out in his celebrate his day. And a few days ago, that is it is more even frustrating. This Muslim person, he actually slit throats of 2-3 Hindu boys, right? And then again, his mother also not defending him. But when it came to the community, all the Muslims came out in his funeral and all these things. It actually shows there is a huge the indoctrination to radicalism is happening in the Muslim community. So if that goes, then it might lead to civil war. And after if it goes very large, right, it will create another Pakistan kind of movement. When the Pakistan movement happened, Muslim proportion was less than 30%. If these Indian Muslims they get sort of support from the other anti-Hindu brigade, sort of radical Christians or liberals, it is actually a similar kind of constituency they have. So it can go that way when Khalistanis or these people. So then we don't know after a civil war kind of situation how our leadership will work and everything. I can't predict. But the way when I give this theory, see this idea of the theory is to reform the social sciences. Social sciences, it is said that essentially you cannot have any theory and you have to always teach the Marxist theory. So I'm giving the alternative ways, how you actually can these things that can do this reform. Whether it will work or not, that's a thing. And Kiranji also said a very nice thing, and he actually expressed the concern. Yeah, so my book actually, right-wing people, they don't read political theories, they read history. Left-wing people, they read political theories. So this is a right-wing sort of book. I mean, for anyone.
If you have to classify it, if you have to classify it,
You
yes.
have to classify it, right? Yeah. And it's a political theory. So it's so it has been to a few times top 20 in the political theory list. But of course, it is not sufficient. Anyway, it is not close to sufficient to destroy the use of the term majoritarianism in Indian politics. It has to go at least 10, 15 times more to make it an impact. So as a first-time author, I'm doing all right. So I saw people, famous people, I won't name them, their books published along with me. Books are not that famous. People are famous. Their books are not doing any better than me. I checked Amazon rankings. So first-time author, okay. But the book was not written for personal glory. Book was written to compel them not to use the word majoritarian. Their success is almost zilch. No success has happened.
No, but Kausik, for that you need to wait a few more years at least if not decades. See really the effect of it, correct?
A decade is too long. It has
No,
to
but-
happen
but,
within 5 years, otherwise this is missed. No, I don't know.
No, but you see, I mean, what really was the most important part of the book, and you mentioned it, and let me conclude with that, is that you were right. So whenever any debate happens, the left says, look, we have a theory, we have a debate. Oh, you know nothing about it. You're not even qualified for debate, right? And this stonewalling, this dismissal that happens, there is now a framework. As you said, it may not be perfect. Of course, it may not. No theory can explain everything under the world, but at least now this is a very, very good starting point. And this can explain a lot of things that are happening around, and at least there is a way of thinking about it. And in academia, again, you have written about it in the book, there is just no space for the so-called right. Even in America, probably it's more in America. And in Indian scenario,
I would have
we are
not been able to
probably-
write this book.
Sorry?
Where I am in America, I would have not been able to write this book. I would have been excommunicated.
Correct. Probably that is also true. As you said, you're surviving because you're not from social science. Probably we are all surviving because none of us depend on it for our
That's the
salary.
point.
I don't know. I don't know. America, you wouldn't have survived in California for sure.
No, I don't think
No,
you
I
will
mean,
survive
America is
as
like
a
that.
social scientist anywhere, Abhijit. So I think being
No,
in
no, I'm
academia,
saying
I
that,
can
I mean-
absolutely see where Kausik is coming from. I can
I'm
vouch it
saying,
myself.
yes.
Even in India, it's so
No,
problematic.
what I'm saying is, America, forget it. I mean, whether America, you may survive in some odd places here and there and not. In California, you will not survive that for sure.
No, of
Guaranteed.
course, that's the
I
most
can give it in,
No, but if you see,
Even on the-
California is
even
of
on the-
course the
No, even on the map, you can see it's the most
okay,
left.
coastal California. I correct myself, coastal California.
Yeah,
no,
yes, the
the
most-
point is even Jordan Peterson has
I
to go
think-
away. So it's not easy to serve.
All right, but let me thank. If there are any more questions, there is a very quick thing. Otherwise, it's actually over time. So let me thank Kausik again. Kausik, I mean, I recommend this book again to all the readers. When whoever is interested, not the readers, whoever has not read it. A lot of facts, lot of analysis from different angles, as Kiranji pointed out. Of course, and he has himself said in the afterword that criticism about the book is tolerated because this is about tolerance, right? So you can contact him. You can. I mean, there may be a next version of the book. I'm not sure that can elaborate on some of the other things and can have more updated statistics, etc. So, Kausik,
Just one
thank you
small
again.
thing, Arnab, just
Kiranji,
one small
yes,
point.
sure.
If you're bringing out the next version, Kausik ji, or next edition, perhaps you could dilate a little bit more about what makes India so not LTSC.
Yeah.
What is it that makes India so much far away from LTSC? Because that itself requires a lot of thing, which was not the main object of this book. That's why I did not talk about it. And, but
Right.
do keep it
Yeah.
in mind. Yeah.
Correct. It was mentioned in that last part, I think, Satya and Ahimsa, but of course it can be. I'm not sure. It is just my speculation that there will be a second version. As he said, he's busy
Rajivji,
writing another book.
No, I mean,
So Rajivji, yes,
but I don't
please.
know. But for the next edition, this book has to be sold a lot more than it has been sold. I'll
So
go
Rajivji,
to
yes, yes.
Rajivji has raised his hand. But
Correct.
I
Rajivji.
actually want to say something to all of you.
Mhm.
Can I
Yeah.
request something to all of you for taking
Yes,
Rajivji's
Kausik, yes,
question?
please.
So I'm saying that please go to Amazon, to all of you who have read the book, and give a review.
Review,
If it is
yes.
not verified, just give unverified review. It helps the book. I mean, kind of these things.
Yeah.
Number of reviews.
Yes, Rajivji.
Yeah, so just very quick points. This is a very valuable session. We have to promote this actively. I know I'm just giving a pep talk, but first thing, people need to buy the book. Okay. Second, read it. Third, review it. Fourth, promote it heavily. Left has this ecosystem, right? We do not. But this is where individual effort will come into picture, and get Kausik to, get him more invites wherever, any platform, just recommend, hey, look, this is a very important book and a piece of, intellectual piece. You need to look into it. That's of course given. We all should do it. Put some extra effort. Secondly, the thing about about academia in America. So I just want to inform that there is a resistance movement that is building up against the left, and in the form of academia, there is a new kind of university coming up in Austin. It's called University of Austin, and just pull up their website and see like the kind of, it is, it's coming from a Christian right. So you will find some, that discourse. But my point is that they are actively developing, counter theories, counter critical theories. And that could be a good model to adopt in India, or whoever is working, just like Kausik ji. So don't give up on academia. That's one of the messaging. And so we have to build our own ecosystem and come up with the counter social theories, because we cannot simply ignore. I mean, it was very clear from Kaushik's talk today that we have to show up for the battle. If we do not show up for the battle, then we lose by default. So development of Indic based or Indic oriented counter social theories, critical theories, come up with some resistance in academic terms, that will help. And thanks for the great talk, Kausik.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Right. So
everyone.
just a couple of things that people who may not be knowing. This Voice of India Academy, as part of that, we have book donation programs to different libraries and colleges. And you can also set up college campus chapters, and we will support it. And we, of course, have this program of reviewing books that are very important, requesting the author to be present for one of the sessions and have this more sessions like this. With this, let us end today. Professor Gangopadhyay, so thank you very much for this. It's good to meet you in this formal setting once more and have another debate. long lost this class 11, 12. As you remember, we were naive. We did not know many of the things, but I think but we still had that. Now I can see that the germs were there, that we still used to debate very heavily. And we were in hostel, so we had ample time to debate. So
I think those days were very different. Social media was not there. Yeah.
Social media was, we only had each other to entertain us, right? So right. So with this,
thank you, Arnav, for very
thank you,
giving apart from and reading the book and very excellent review.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very nice.